we'd like to be able to be one of the first farms in the country to offer hemp-raised protein, and especially from bison. I mean, there's not too many guys that are going to play around with bison, let alone feeding them hemp.
That's Herb Grove, hemp farmer and bison rancher at Brush Mountain Bison up there in Centre County, Pennsylvania. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to be talking to Herb Grove about his various endeavors with bison and hemp, including that logical intersection between the two, the feed trough. Herb says hemp makes a great addition to feed rations and has beneficial effects on the health of his herd and the flavor of their meat. We'll also hear about the first time he took his hemp-fed bison to get processed and how the state of Pennsylvania responded.
And they showed up like clockwork and kind of put the clinks to that real quick.
We'll be right back after these messages. This episode is brought to you in part by I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. I&D Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven, and environmentally focused industrial hemp food, feed, and fiber company, providing new opportunities for farmers and rural communities. Their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. Learn more at indhemp.com. This episode is brought to you in part by the National Hemp Association. The NHA is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. that advocates for sensible public policy and regulation. The NHA is dedicated to building a sustainable future and promoting economic development in rural communities. Become a member today and join a thriving community of people with a passion for all things hemp. Learn more at nationalhempassociation.org. Okay, welcome back. Today is February 22nd, 2023, and this is my first time recording a show from the new Lancaster Farming Podcast studio at the new and improved Lancaster Farming headquarters in downtown Ephrata, Pennsylvania. This new studio is a work in progress. I'm still sort of dialing in the acoustics of the room and the sound of the show. I'm trying out different microphones, so maybe you hear a difference, maybe you don't. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know what was happening, and I thank you for your patience and understanding. So anyway, we've got a handful of news nuggets for you this week. This first one comes to us from KIVITV.com out there in Jerome, Idaho. The headline reads, Hemp-fed opens first industrial hemp manufacturing plant in the U.S. Is that true? I don't know. Let's read the story. Hemp-fed became the first industrial hemp manufacturing plant in the U.S. on February 17th. It is the first of its kind in America, helping to produce Hemp-fed's staple product, hemp wool, a new, eco-friendly, sustainable housing insulation. The opening marks the start of a new industry in southern Idaho that hopes to benefit the Magic Valley and the state's economy as a whole. This area is prime for growth. The pump is primed. Companies are going to continue to come here. I think we are just seeing the start of Jerome and the Magic Valley region becoming a manufacturing and economic powerhouse, said Maddie Mead, CEO and founder of Hemp-fed. Yeah, I hope so too. Good job, Maddie Mead and the crew out there in Idaho. I'm just not so sure that the writer of this story, Isaiah Sharp, got all the facts right. Isaiah, if you're listening, you might want to check out Hemp Wood in Kentucky, who I think can also claim to be the first industrial hemp manufacturing plant in the U.S. Anyway, moving on. This next story comes to us from Nebraska. It's on KETV.com, and the headline reads, Hemp growers say industry stymied in Nebraska. The story starts like this. In Fort Benton, Montana, there's a multi-million-dollar industrial hemp processing plant that could be the model for Nebraska, according to its owner, Ken Elliott. We've got all the resources here in Nebraska to build the same thing. It's just a shame we haven't done it yet, Elliott said. Elliott and his family have strong ties to Nebraska, but he said the reason he didn't build here is that current state laws are not friendly for processors or farmers to invest in hemp for food or fiber. The story goes on to say that the Nebraska legislature's Ag Committee introduced LB 263. It would level the playing field by aligning Nebraska with the latest federal farm bill. It would loosen some testing and harvest restrictions, increase the negligence threshold from 0.5% THC to 1%. It would allow for the use of performance-based sampling to be set out in the state plan. It would increase the harvest window from 15 to 30 days, allow remediation options for hemp testing, and it would offer more options for destruction of hemp exceeding the acceptable THC limit. All right, so there you go. Come on, Nebraska, you can do this. All right, here's a story I read on Hemp Today about Zimbabwe. It says that Zimbabwe strikes hemp from drugs list, sets THC limit at 1%. The story says that amended legislation in Zimbabwe has removed industrial hemp from the country's list of dangerous drugs and set the defining line between marijuana and hemp at 1%. The legislation, the Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2022, is intended to open up the market to a wider range of hemp genetics and business in local seed research, development, and production, in addition to expanded options for farmers. All right, there you go. Good job, Zimbabwe. And finally, this last story is from the New York Times. Yeah, the headline says, "In search for sustainable materials, developers turn to hemp." It's written by Kevin Williams, and it starts like this. As ballroom dancers twirl and competitive ping pong players swing their paddles in the French town of Crossy-Beaubourg, they are doing so in what some describe as the future of building construction. When the Pierre Chevette Sports Hall opened last year in the tiny municipality on the outskirts of Paris, it was the first commercial project in France constructed almost exclusively of hemp blocks, and many hemp enthusiasts predict this is just the beginning. Yeah, this is just the beginning. So anyway, there's a lot of great stuff in this story, but I'm going to read you one of my favorite parts right here. The story says later on that Rachel Barry is experimenting with growing hemp fibers on her windswept Illinois farm. As the founder of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association, she focuses on the plant itself and building out a viable supply chain from there. There are a lot of moving parts: growers, processors, manufacturers, and companies using the hemp, Miss Barry said. But the first step is getting farmers interested, and hemp's cannabis connection can cause them to tune out. The stigma of cannabis still looms here, she said. So yes, shout out to Rachel Barry from the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. That's cool, in the New York Times. All right, so that's the hemp news for this week. I'll have links to all of these stories on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. Do you have a news nugget you want to share, or maybe a hemp event coming up? Maybe you just have a question or a suggestion. You can always get in touch with me by email. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. Okay, let's talk about hemp-fed bison. Herb Grove from Brush Mountain Bison. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've met each other a couple of times at a few different events. I think the first time was at King's Agri-Seeds Field Day this past summer, and then again at the Hemp Summit in Harrisburg.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, but we've communicated a few times before that, though, because I guess you're a subscriber to Lancaster Farming newspaper and you listen to the podcast sometimes.
Appreciate all the work you do in the hemp industry. It's awesome. Keeps a lot of people around the country networked, and I've talked to a lot of people in the industry from different states that have listened to your podcast and read your articles, and it's a good job keeping everybody in the same space.
Cool. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, I want to hear about what you do up there at Brush Mountain Bison. So you got your hands in a couple of different things.
Yeah, we're pretty diversified. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. We started raising bison in 2011, relatively small herd. We've built it up to one of the larger bison herds east of the Mississippi. So we got in the bison business in 2011. We applied for a hemp permit in 2019. So we got pretty much integrated in the hemp industry and industrial hemp. We did the CBD story, same as everybody else. Kind of modified, made our own equipment, working with Susquehanna Hemp Company out of Muncy, PA.
That's Josh Leidecker's company, yeah?
Josh Leidecker, great guy to work with. We do all kinds of projects. We still do projects. We work with him and growing small seeds, sunflower seeds, canola. We're one of the only farms doing a lot of canola, probably the only farm in central Pennsylvania. We do sunflowers. the hemp is really where the passion is. We started raising hemp 2019, working with Groff down in Red Lion, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we did a contract grow for them right out of the gate. So we signed up and ran about 150 acres for fiber.
Yeah.
Um, that was interesting. So we were able to play around with that many acres. We got a lot of experience in planting hemp after different crops from corn, soybeans, rye, hay ground. So we found out what works, what doesn't work. And when you first got into the hemp industry, you didn't have a lot of information about sprays and chemicals. It was definitely people that wanted to step outside of the box and learn new things.
Yeah.
So we got tied into that pretty quick.
Okay.
Um,
Well, let's first start talking about the bison. All right. Well, let's talk about the farm itself. Like, do you come from a farming family?
Yeah, so we grew up. Both my grandparents farmed through the 50s. My grandfather on my mom's side retired from farming before I was born, actually. My grandfather on my dad's side continuing the beef operation. So we actually got lucky enough to purchase the farm that my grandfather had on my mom's side in 2018. We bought that farm back in the family. And we've since taken over my farm from my other grandfather as well and switched that farm from beef to bison.
Oh,
So
well.
we're running bison herds on both properties at this point in time.
Okay.
We started out kind of a joke, got into it with 6 head animals, met a lot of cool people, just like the hemp industry. It's a small niche market. We got networked with a lot of cool people, a lot of good information. We kept growing our herds. We're up to about a 55 cow calf herd and have kind of seen the writing on the wall. So we've switched to more of a feedlot operation. So we buy a lot of calves now.
Hmm.
We run about 200 head of calves on feed around the year and then harvest those certain animals every month.
Okay.
So that's kind of
How?
what we shifted into in the bison business. We
Yeah.
started out as cow calf and currently now we're on the feedlot side.
Okay. How old are they when you harvest them?
So the animals on the feedlot tend to be between 16 and 19 months old. And
Okay.
when you grain feed bison, they tend to grow rather quick.
Yeah.
As opposed to grass raising animals, it's just a longer process.
Do you do any grass-fed stuff there, or is it all feedlot?
Yeah, our main herd is grass fed, so we still have a 40 cow herd up in the pasture. They run all on grass and hay, and there's still our brood cow herd, so we grab our calves off that for the feed program, and we call out cows throughout the year, and those animals are all sold for the grass fed market.
Okay.
So we have a good market for just grass fed meat for a lot of local restaurants. Some individual people buy that. We have a good market where people call in and buy halves and wholes. Most of our sales in the bison industry are on the website, which is
Okay.
buckwildbison.com. So we networked and sell, 90% of our meat gets sold to customers all over the country.
Wow. Okay. Talk a little bit about the difference between, beef and bison.
All right, so the difference in bison and beef is really unique. The fact that bison higher in protein right out of the gate. The fat cap on a buffalo or bison, however you want to frame it, we're bison people. And the fat cap is always on the outside of the protein on the bison, where beef tend to marble. So if you're eating beef steaks, you tend to get more fat integrated in your meat, as opposed to bison, it tends to be on the outside of the protein itself. So
Okay.
it's really unique to compare apples to apples in the meat. It's higher in protein, it's less in fat, lower in cholesterol. It's just a way healthier. We like to call it America's original red meat. I mean, they were here before the beef cows and
Yes,
everything
sir.
else. I mean, we're definitely promoting hemp and bison in the same structure. I mean, it was here before the people, and it's both of these things we're working with are phenomenal.
Um, like from a flavor point of view, like how does it compare?
Well, I'd like to say most people would agree that it's a little sweeter. It's not near as gamey as the game you tend to think.
Hmm.
Bison in general is sweeter. Um, with more protein. You can cook a half-pound bison burger in a pan right beside a half-pound beef burger, and the bison doesn't shrink.
Oh,
And your beef tend to shrink.
yeah.
So in a consumer standpoint, you'd eat that whole bison burger and be full, where you might want to eat 2 beef burgers to get the same satisfaction as being full. And a lot of people tend to agree that eat a lot of bison.
Yeah. Okay.
People, we have a lot of food people that have allergies that can eat bison that can't eat beef, which is really unique. So we have a lot of customers that tend to get different side effects from eating beef that they just never get with bison.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yep. Yep.
And so you said you got into this just with like a half a dozen animals?
Yeah, we started 2011. We have a friend in the bison industry. We were coming across Route 30 in Bedford and Shellsburg and seeing these animals out in the pasture and pull off the road and just kind of fell in love with the animals. Talked to the guy, kind of give us the shoulder at the point just because I'm sure he had a lot of people stop by wanting to get in the bison industry. And we were definitely serious about it. And he hooked us up with a connection that got us our first six animals. They come from Amish guy, actually, I think, over towards Raystown. So we started out with two calves, two yearlings, and two calves. That was our first six animals, and we had no clue what we were getting into. So, I called my brother up and I asked him what his penny was. He told me stay away, it was crazy. And at that point, it was too late. I already bought the animals. So we hurried up and started working on pens and corrals and what we need, the infrastructure to hold the animals.
Yeah.
And after getting into it without any information whatsoever, we joined the EBA, the Eastern Bison Association, and started networking with a lot of local bison farmers then. Fell in love with the people and what the purpose was. And from that point on, it's kind of history. We had some people call, got out of the business. We were able to buy some herds out, build our herd relatively quick,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in the cow calf operation at that time in 2012 and 13. It was a breeder's market, so we were selling calves upwards of $1,700-$1,800, and we were making profit on just selling the calves.
Wow.
Shift has now been into the meat side, which is if we can educate more consumers about the health of bison. Just a unique study come out this week from the U.S. foods industry, and they claim bison is the number one source of protein. It's the healthiest protein out there.
Wow.
So it was a good study in our industry.
Yeah.
And if people start educating themselves more on that, then they'll find out the benefits of bison over regular beef.
Sounds like it's got some parallels with the hemp industry.
It absolutely does. It's right in line with the hemp industry.
Well, how
Yep.
did you like? Why did you want to get involved in hemp then? You said you grew for Dr. Steve Groff back in 2019.
Um, I had an interesting visitor one day that tried talking me into hemp in 2018, which was technically the first year I think the permits come out in Pennsylvania. Does that sound about right?
17 was the first year you could get a permit.
2017, he was here and they were growing it. And I just, man, he was telling me about CBD and how they were doing it by hand. And I'm like, man, that's just crazy to me. And I started researching in it and finding some different, avenues that what he was saying was right. The health coming from the plant itself, and just really tore into some research. And based on what I've come up with, I mean, hemp's got way more benefits than any other single plant out there. When you can do everything from lumber you can do with a hemp plant. You got municipal purposes. You got so many benefits to this plant that it is just phenomenal. And the writing on the wall says this should be profitable. If we can manage all those markets and networks and get the government on board, I think there's opportunity for us all to make money in it.
Amen to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least benefit people. Like, we don't chase money, we chase purpose, and the purpose is to help people. Lower cost, renewable energy. It's better for the ground. I mean, we've seen it all with this plant.
Right.
So
Right. So if you were growing for Groff back then, you must have been at that like
yep,
information dinner that he had at the restaurant. Okay. So
yep.
maybe I met you there because I was at that.
Yeah, probably. I was an unknown at that point. We stuck around right to the end, went down to the main table, introduced ourselves, and from that point, we had a good connection with those guys, and it was unique. So that year alone, we had some acres that were pretty weedy that I wouldn't have recommended for fiber,
Mm-hmm.
and they agreed with it, and they let us go ahead. We combined it, so that was the first year we were able to harvest the seeds, learn how to handle the seeds, dry the seeds, store the seeds. So that was a process in its own. So we got our feet wet in the grain side as well as the fiber side right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Um, so we just started covering all the bases at that point.
All right. Were you growing any CBD?
We were working with Josh. So Josh was taking care of the CBD end down in Muncy.
Okay. Yeah.
So we actually got the opportunity. We built a commercial dryer and a tractor trailer. We retrofitted it. We were able to dry the plants. So guys that were harvesting the CBD, we could put them in this dryer, dried them down. My brother put together this awesome bucker. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best buckers in the industry. I mean, we could buck plants we're at like 10 plants a minute. I mean, it just everything worked good.
Nice.
And everybody was gung ho, as you know, in the CBD,
Yeah.
and it just kind of went flat. So,
Right.
um,
But so when you were growing the fiber and then taking the grain off of that, did you have to, like customize your equipment at all, or was it just pretty much you could run a combine?
uh, I'm not gonna say we had to customize a lot. We just had to kept making some adjustments. We had a lot of issues with that stuff wrapping around different parts of the combine and
Mhm.
the machine. We were pulling the head off, cutting this stuff off of bearings, rolls. It really, to be honest with you, it was a nightmare. Um, so we got through it, made it work. The biggest hurdle was just handling the seeds. We're taking them off at 18, 19%. There's a lot of foreign matter. So, we had to clean them, put them through the dryer. We have a continuous flow dryer. We ran the seeds down. We were really nervous because, you can pop them real quick, too much heat. So we learned to, we figured out how to increase the speed of the dryer and do a lower heat and get the moisture we needed.
Okay.
At that point, we ran them through a cleaner again, and then we were storing them in super sacks.
Right.
Until we had the opportunity to send them down to Susquehanna Hemp Co. or Susquehanna Mills, then they did the pressing and then pressed the seeds for the oil.
Right. Right.
At that point, we have the byproduct of the seeds after the oil's out of it. And what better opportunity to do than start feeding it to your animals?
Yeah, that's the cake, right? And they probably
Yeah.
loved it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it come out of the presses, and here we have all this seed cake. So, we ended up having to grind it and making it. They wouldn't eat it straight up. So we actually ended up building a whole trials barn. So we built a barn. We got hooked up with Penn State. They wanted us to build this barn. So we built a barn that has 4 equal pens in it and the same square footage. And at that point, we started our own feed trial with the bison. So we started using hemp as a filler protein in our grain rations, and that's how we got started in using it for feed value.
Okay. And do you still do that? Are you still feeding it?
Yeah, so now we're feeding it to the whole lot. So all our animals, we're still using it as an additive to the feed. Unfortunately, because it's not legal to sell a finished animal for protein being fed on hemp, we can continue to feed hemp up until the last 3 months, and then we have to pull the hemp out of the feed rations at this point and supplement a different protein.
Okay. Do you notice benefits in the animals that are eating that hemp?
So the cool thing about the barn is we had 4 equal pens, and we'd run a group of animals that weren't on hemp, and we'd run a group of animals that were on hemp. So we had people in the bison industry stop numerous times to check out the differences. And the number one thing is that their coats are healthier. They look healthy. You could just tell with the higher oil acid in the seed cake, the animals look phenomenal. They really did. So we started that program on a set of bulls that were already 12 months old. So they got fed hemp for 6 months of their life. And then we went ahead and started harvesting those animals. Local processor, the state got wind of it. They showed up, locked our carcass up in the cooler. And at this point, when we took the animals over, you have to fill out a set of papers requesting that you get to keep certain portions of those animals for testing. So at that point, we needed a piece of the liver fat, regular fat, piece of the protein, and I'm not sure if we did a heart sample a couple times. So in order to collect all those from a USDA inspected plant, you have to have permission from the state to keep those samples. And at that point, it brought attention to the state of this was a hemp-fed animal, and they showed up like clockwork and kind of put the links to that real quick.
Wow.
Yeah, so it took us a few days to get over that hurdle and come in agreement that we weren't selling these animals for profit. So at that point, we were able to, to give those samples away to certain individuals to try, to consume and get their opinion. Jeff Kostick was one of them that owned, hemp genetics up in Canada.
Okay.
He was in town that week and had the opportunity to try one of these hemp raised steaks and just loved it. I mean, everybody that's eaten the animals that have consumed the protein,
Yeah.
all agreed that it's just a sweeter, very tender meat. It is definitely a flavor saver as far as I'm concerned.
So you can notice a difference between the hemp-fed animals and the non-hemp-fed animals.
Absolutely. And when they're in the rail and the cooler, there is a different tint of yellow fat in the hemp raised animals as opposed to our regular grain fed animals. Their fat tends to be brighter white.
Okay.
If you're familiar with your protein, a lot of the people that are after the grass-fed animals, the fat on a grass-fed animal is very yellow. It's not white at all. And we tend to find that the hemp-fed animals are following the same pattern,
Okay.
that there tends to be more yellow fat as opposed to white.
Any speculation? Does that have anything to do with like the omega 3s, or what do you think
So
it's from?
So based on all the results, the only thing that has really changed on all the labs we've gotten back is the omega-6s are higher on the hemp-raised animals than our grain-fed animals. Our goal was that the fives would be a little bit higher, but the sixes are. Other than that, it hasn't really changed across the board.
Hmm.
Other than the way the animals look, while they're in the barn, they definitely are shinier. Coats are definitely better. And then in the cooler, we could definitely tell a difference just in the color and the fat as opposed to our regular grain-fed animals.
Okay. When you got those, like the liver sample and stuff, were you testing those for like cannabinoid content, or what were the
Well, the
results of those
interesting
tests?
thing is, until recently, I didn't even know that you could test for cannabinoids. We were trying to find labs that can test protein for that cannabinoid carryover, and I just got a chance to talk with Morgan Tweed at the Hemp Feed Coalition.
Hmm.
We got an opportunity to work with those guys, and apparently there is labs that can test for that now. So our next test will definitely have that included in it.
Okay. I
Um,
expect that's going to be very, very minuscule, if any,
if
cannabinoids show up in the meat from the grain.
my guess would have to be, hardly anything. I mean, I can't believe that they're finding the traces of it coming from the seed at all, to be honest with you.
Right, because the seed doesn't produce it. So if it's there, it's probably coming in from contamination from the leaf matter, right?
Yep. I'm just having a hard time believe that there is much of a carryover at all,
Yeah.
especially when humans can consume the seeds all day long. I'm not sure what the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be so frustrating for you, producer of the animals and the grain and
Yep, it is just a big loss to us. I mean, as farmers in general, the price of protein's so high now with commodities. We have this byproduct that we can't even legally put through our animals, and it's only a percentage of what we're feeding to the animals anyway. It's just
mm,
an added protein source. So we're pulling, we might pull distillers grain out, soybean meal, and add the hemp. They're still getting all the other um, starches and energies and everything else out of the feed we're feeding. It's
mm,
just an additive for protein.
yeah, crazy.
So yeah, we've got a lot of hurdles to get over, that's for sure.
Yeah. So are you planting hemp this year?
We're on the fence yet. We did not grow hemp last year. We had some stuff on the table we were going to do for a company out of Arizona, actually. That kind of fell through at the last minute. We got some stuff on the table guys want us to grow for. And again, it's just one of those plants at this point. It's just a tough one to talk us into unless we really have the markets. The good thing is there's a few guys on the East Coast that are pushing pretty hard to get the markets up and running, get the equipment in place. And at that point, the work's going to be convincing guys to get back in the hemp business, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first there was the marijuana stigma, and then there's the CBD stigma, and it's like, come on. So hopefully, the fiber and grain, it's a slower rollout, and it develops more sensibly.
We'll see how that plays out. I mean, a lot of this is just leaning on our government and policies, and I'm just not sure, like I said about earlier, the Hemp Feed Coalition, they're doing a good job getting stuff in front of everybody and the feds and getting it legalized. It's just, I'm not sure what the holdup is, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you sourcing your hemp cake now if you're not growing it?
So at this point, we can get it out of Healthy Oil Seeds on North Dakota Rich up there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
we the last couple times we brought it down from up there.
okay.
In fact, in 2020, we grew another 150 acres of hemp, and we did it for all seeds. So we harvested all the seeds, dried them, and we ended up shipping the majority of the seeds out to him to press for oil.
Oh, okay.
Um, just for the holdup of the market on the oil back here, just isn't where we think it ought to be yet.
Right, right.
But so yeah, we kind of formed a group up there so we can get our protein, our hemp cake off of them guys.
Nice. Okay. Um, can you describe what your farm looks like? Like, so you're out in like the middle of the state, like Center County.
We're dead smack in the central Pennsylvania. We border Penn's Cave. If anybody's heard of Penn's Cave, it's a unique, one of a kind tourist attraction. We're in the bottom of Brush Mountain. Our background is all Brush Mountain, which hence comes our name. Um, yeah, we actually operate a trucking company repair shop off the farm, which provides cash flow for us to do all these hobbies that
Yeah.
just we're not there yet.
Yeah. Right. So you got your hands in lots of different
Yep,
things.
yep.
Okay.
We're staying busy.
You got
Um,
employees, you got a family, who's all working for you?
No, yeah, the bison side of things is pretty much family. My brother and I head up the farming side. My dad's retired agronomist. He used to work for Gromart. He takes care of the crops, the sprays. So he's definitely a lot of people in the hemp industry know him. He's good at coming up with different concoctions to handle the weed pressures and control stuff like that. And my daughter, a lot of people know her, Scoot. She definitely works her part in the bison side of it, the marketing and all that.
Yeah.
So on the farm side, it's all family. We do have a full-time employee to help do some of the oddball stuff, but for the most part, it's all family doing the farming side.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So, like I said, we have a farm in Central PA. Our other location is about 7 miles west of us. We have bison up there, and we crop farm there as well. And then several acres in between that we got to pick up or whatever.
Yeah. Are the bison just out on pasture most of the time, and then you bring them back at the to the feedlot towards the end, or how's that work?
Our cow calf herd, which is a grass fed herd, they're on pasture 100% of their time. When we wean calves in December, then as soon as we're pulled off and they're kind of quarantined for a couple of weeks to make sure they're healthy, good, they have their vaccine shots. Then they're moved over to the other side where they got feed in front of them. They got plenty of space. They're not crazy about being in a barn. They're not like a cattle. They tend to like to stay outside in the elements. So
Yeah.
that's a unique thing. Bison are definitely they're cheaper to raise. They eat less than beef cows, which means they put out less manure than a beef cow, less gas than a beef cow. Not that I'm against beef by all means, but at the end of the day, it's just a better fit for us and what the animals actually do. They are hardy. You don't mess with them in calving season. They do their own thing. You got to learn some different approaches. If you see an animal that doesn't look as healthy, we use a tranquilizer gun to give medicine as opposed to stressing the animals out, trying to catch them, running through a system.
Yeah.
We can just hit them with a dart. They got medicine and we keep an eye on them and they just keep doing their own thing. Very, very hardy animals for that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. What's their like general personality like? You think
They're aggressive.
are they? Okay.
You don't pet these things. They do what they want to, and they go where they want to. Working with bison is a cat and mouse kind of game. You gotta, get them persuaded to go one way and move some gates, so they got to go that other way. And when they're coming through the chutes, they're full tilt running. We joke with a lot of beef guys. Once we work with bison, I don't know if we could ever go back to working with beef in the same manner, just because it's so quick, it's high tense, and it's just when it's go time. These animals you need to get them moving as quick as you can. We don't want to keep them in a pen any longer than we have to. We want to get them through and vaccinated, treated, whatever we got to do with them as quickly as possible. And as soon as they come out of that chute, they're calm as buttons again. But once you put them in a situation that they're just not familiar with, they are not happy.
Hmm.
So we've had to learn a lot of new steps in working with these animals.
Okay.
For
Um,
sure.
I imagine there's like a whole like world of genetics in the bison world. Like, do you know where your animals come from? Are they from like the Great Plains or?
Yeah. So they have tried to start a bison registry in North America. It's not as there's just not a lot of guys in the bison industry. We have a lot of genetics. We've gotten animals from Yellowstone Park, Custer State Park. Ted Turner's a big advocate in bison. He has raised some beautiful animals in good genetics. We've gotten animals from his herd. There's a dog, Ken Thorson, in North Dakota. So we have a variety of cows and bulls that have come from all over the country, some pretty good herds. So at the end of the day, there is no registry. If you're in the bison industry, you kind of know where the better animals are, and you tend to go there and follow where they come from.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're committed to bison. You're committed to hemp, and describe to me the logo for your farm.
So our logo is pretty unique, I think. It's a cool logo. If you look at our logo, it's an off-brand of our transportation company. It's got the mountain in the background. It's got the keystone around the circle represents our state, and it's got the three animals coming from the mountain. So I'm pretty proud of the brand and what we stand for and what we kind of do.
And there's
So,
a hemp leaf back behind the three animals, right?
so the interesting part about that logo is an open space in the leaf. If you can see that gap. So we trademarked our logo, or we're still in the process of the trademark. And if you ever mess with any trademarking deals, this has still been a disaster. We cannot get this thing legalized through the government because of the hemp leaf. When we started the logo, we left the center open, specifically saying this is not a marijuana leaf, and that's why we're different than a marijuana leaf. And I'm hoping that's what gets us to the trademark. We've had to go in several times and change our business structure within that logo, and we still haven't got it legalized yet for the trademark.
Wow, that's crazy. So what's that
Legal,
issue with the government? Like, what's their
because
problem
it's
with the
legal.
leaf?
When we're trying to trademark a brand, they don't want to see any wording that has to do with the word hemp. And again, that's another government issue. Like we are having battles, just trying to do it the right way from the get go is costing us time and money that is just being wasted because they think that is a problem. We have an issue with our local school. We have cool t-shirts and apparel. Our kids can't wear them to the school because it has a hemp leaf on it. So my nieces and nephews, they'll try to sneak them in and wear them and then explain what we're after. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good education tool to wear the brand and come up with a conversation piece. And 99 times out of 100, somebody asks the question, is that marijuana? And at that point, it opens up a discussion of why hemp. And that's our goal is to educate people on why hemp.
Right, right. Because you're up against that, 80 years of prohibition and reefer madness and all that stuff.
You're working against it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Huh. All right. So when will you officially know if you can have that trademark?
I mean, we're running with it. I mean, I'm not concerned with it all. They're not concerned with it. It's just a matter of time. But I mean, it could be another 12 months, I suppose, before. And we started this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same way with getting, hemp introduced into the feed program. I mean, we've been doing it for 2 years. We've got our own science. Obviously, it's not the best science because we're not, a program, a school. We got Penn State that backs us, because they're doing the research. So we know the facts. I'm not sure what the holdup is. I mean,
Yeah.
it tastes better. It's good for the animals. They're healthy. And there's not enough changes on our labs to have any reason why it's not legal. I mean, that's the biggest thing. There's just not enough differences to make it not legal.
So looking ahead, what are your future plans? You said you're not growing this year, but you think you'll get back to growing hemp?
No, I think we're definitely going to grow some hemp this year. At what extent, I'm not sure. We have a couple people that I'd like to try some different things with, and that'll probably be on our own dime. Some different planting strategies, a little different harvest strategies. So either way, we're going to plant some for our own purpose, and if we can work with a company that's interested, we might do it the way they need it done. So I'm not sure, what the goal is as far as growing it becomes. Our goal overall on the farm is to just keep pushing forward and hopefully be able to provide this hemp raised protein for consumers to actually try and have an opportunity to say this is definitely better, it's definitely healthier, it tastes good, and this is the path that they want to take now in proteins.
Sounds like a
That's
good plan.
the farm. As far as hemp in general, you know, it's nice to see a lot of guys sticking with it, but we need to get more guys on it. What I like about hemp is we've planted it after a lot of different crops. The advantages we have in planting after hemp seems to be a bigger plus. We had some fields that did not drain well, held water, didn't do well with soybeans, but the year after we grew hemp, that field held no water, grew beans. I mean, it seemed to drain very well. We've had great results in the aftermath of planting hemp. Um, Goes back to the carbon credit thing as well. I mean, when does that become a play where we can grab extra, profit for carbon credits because it's healthier for the environment?
Right.
Like, if you want to talk about the environment, let's talk about it. So that's kind of my mindset is.
Good. I think you've got the right mindset, and I hope it's contagious. I hope you can spread that around to other producers, other farmers.
Yep. No, I think we got a good step on it, and a lot of local guys will follow the lead if we can figure out how to be profitable, harvest it efficiently, and get it moving forward. There's a lot of guys that I'm sure would follow suit. It's just getting the markets where they need to be to make it profitable all the way around. And now we're competing against corn and soybeans being high, so everything else has to be high, and it's tough for some of these big guys getting into the industry with equipment manufacturing to be competitive because they just don't know either.
Right. Right.
So,
Do you have any ideas on like how to open up some markets, or you like some changes that you'd like to see?
um, I'm not sure if I have any really ideas. There's all kinds of ideas out there, but it just takes a lot of money to get those ideas into play when you don't have the backing of the government and a lot of people. You got a lot of pushback. It's different when you have an idea where there's not going to be any pushback. So at the end of the day, if we don't have good spray programs, we don't have chemicals labeled for hemp. There's a lot of information that, could really come down the line that makes it more profitable for the other guys.
Yeah.
So when we're doing a spray program, we're spending a lot more for chemicals that, should work, but there's a heck of a risk not knowing that they are going to work.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. The risk to reward is just off balance at this point.
So what do you think? 5 years, 10 years? When do you think it's going to be like?
So my professional opinion, I'd say between 3 and 5 years, there's going to be a lot of changes coming.
Okay.
I think if that carbon credit thing that people keep talking about comes into play, I think more guys that try and put their hands in it. We got, like I said, there's 2 or 3 big manufacturers talked about coming to play: Pennsylvania, Maryland, and North Carolina. There was a guy in New York that was talking about doing some stuff. If we get a couple of those guys that actually, start the markets to the end consumers that they need it, now we just started the chain. Now the farmers now need to be up suit. So
Right.
the guys that have been in it and are experienced and grown it are just going to help other guys get into that crop, I hope.
Yeah. Were there any resources that you found helpful that you could share with listeners who are maybe not?
As far as growing hemp,
Yeah, growing hemp. Like, because you've been in it for a few more years, so anything that people can learn
part of
from.
all the research and all the help we have gotten is from other guys that have done it in the past. Jeff Kostick was a good guy, or up in Canada. Um, but really, the cool thing was everybody kind of doing it together, researching labels, researching what foreign countries have done with it, planting depth, seed ratios, all that stuff. And like I said, for us, what really helped us was working with Groff the first year. They give us the opportunity to plant. We were planting from 30 pounds all the way up to 70 pounds per acre. And we had the flexibility to do it after different crops and had the flexibility to spray certain acres with this and certain acres with that. So really all our experiences just come from everything trial and error.
Yeah.
And that's where we're kind of on to, is just, doing it first and figuring it out later kind of thing.
Right.
So that's what we're good at.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
As far as that goes, we were successful in the seed yield. We can do 12 to 1,500 pounds of seeds per acre. Based on the current market, there's value there. Bad point, it takes a long logistical decision to get them somewhere where the markets, and most of the markets for seeds are out west. On the fiber side, we can do 2,000 pounds the acre, which probably are better fields. The harvesting side was a little sketchy because it just wraps around everything. But there's solutions to that. And it's tough for us to keep putting equipment together to keep trying to doing it is if we don't have the profit at the end of the game.
Right.
And that's where it's coming down.
Yeah.
But
all right. So, yeah. Well, is there anything else you want listeners to know about your operation, or, thoughts on hemp?
Yeah, I just think people can keep advocating for hemp just for the better purpose. The renewable resources it provides, from building materials to insulations. Cameron McIntosh, he's coming up with ideas, insulations, building houses. I know it's expensive out of the gate. It's not, if more consumers can use it, the price comes down.
Yep.
But there's a lot of good guys that are just keeping with it. And that's the cool part, is the amount of guys that are sticking with it is what it's going to take to keep it going on the East Coast anyway. Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on the West Coast so much anymore. Most of those guys are back to the seed operation as far as I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm excited to work with the Hemp-fed Coalition. That, they're doing a great job. I'd like to see, as soon as we can become legalized to feed the byproduct of the seed that's pressed for oil, we'd like to be able to be one of the first farms in the country to offer hemp-raised protein, and especially from bison. I mean, there's not too many guys that are going to play around with bison, let alone feeding them hemp.
Right.
I'm pretty excited for the future as soon as we can become legal and offer it to consumers.
Yeah, it sounds like a great, marketing angle.
it's going to be phenomenal. Hopefully it's phenomenal for the bison and the hemp. If we can bring them both together, and they were both here before us. So, I'd like to keep that tradition going with those guys and just see how it works.
Right on. All right. Well, Herb, it's great talking to you today. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you having me, Eric.
All right. There you go. Herb Grove from Brush Mountain Bison. What do you think of that? I would love to hear your feedback on this show. If you've got questions or comments, send them to me. podcast@lancasterfarming.com. So anyway, that's the show for this week. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening. I know you've got a lot of other stuff going on, but that you spend some time with us here at Lancaster Farming just is very meaningful to me. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor here at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Get yourself a subscription. All those things you can do there at lancasterfarming.com. Not to mention the great stories we have there about farming, about country life, about industrial hemp, about sauerkraut, all the things that you value you can find here at lancasterfarming.com. All right, so until next week, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 3, Episode 5 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. That's me. And the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.